a motor vehicle, to which I am not operating a motor vehicle. And this is what we are trying to
I guess
circumvent.
Yeah,
I am operating my automobile, not a motor vehicle.
I will ask you this: how is your right to travel removed by receiving the citation?
By trying to require me to have a license to operate a automobile, which is my private.
Today's courtroom scene was a tense one, and it's becoming all too familiar. A man identifying as a sovereign citizen claimed he didn't need car insurance because, in his words, he wasn't driving. He was merely traveling and, therefore, not subject to traffic laws. Sound familiar? That's because this argument keeps resurfacing, and just like before, it's not standing up in court. To his credit, the magistrate remained composed and respectful, taking the time to break down the legal definitions and explain why the logic simply doesn't apply. While I admire the calm approach, I couldn't help but think the hearing dragged on far too long. This wasn't a tricky legal gray area. It was a repeated misunderstanding of well-established laws. Still, every judge has their style. Some prefer to let people speak their piece, even if their reasoning is legally unsound. This magistrate chose the patient route, possibly to avoid claims of bias. But what do you think? Was the magistrate right to let it play out, or should he have drawn the line sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your take. Let's dive back in and see where this goes.
This is a civil infraction. If you were found responsible, all other things being equal, the court would assess $125 fines, costs, and fees. It is a 0-point ticket. And in the second case that ends with the letter B, that same date, time, and place, you were issued a citation for having an expired registration plate. That is also a civil infraction. It is also a 0-point civil infraction. If you were found responsible, all other things being equal, the court would assess $110 fines, costs, and fees. So first question, is that the ticket or the two cases that you thought you were appearing about, Mr. Williams?
It is.
Okay, and same question to you, Officer Kellums?
Yes, sir.
Very good. In every civil case, the plaintiff has the burden of proof, and in a case like this, that burden of proof is called by a preponderance of evidence.
Only question I have is, will the laws of the U.S. Supreme Court be applicable, and the federal statutes and definitions of motor vehicle and automobile be applicable in this proceeding?
They are the state of Michigan laws that will be applicable.
Okay. The other question is, are you already not bound by U.S. Supreme Court rulings?
Every court is bound by relevant Supreme Court rulings.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure why you're asking that, but that's okay. All right, Officer Kellums, if you would begin, please.
So on November 19th, 2024, I was on patrol for the Battle Creek Police Department. When I observed the vehicle that Mr. Roosevelt was driving, I observed that it had expired tags on the vehicle. I then conducted a traffic stop on Fountain Street near Meacham Ave. Found Mr. Williams to be driving the vehicle, where I issued him the citations. When speaking with Mr. Williams, he could not provide insurance, and his tags were expired.
All right. Did Mr. Williams say anything to you during the stop about having insurance or not having insurance, or anything about the tags on the plates, anything like that?
He informed me that he did not have to have insurance due to that he was traveling, and to drive a vehicle, you have to have insurance. Something regarding Supreme Court. That's about all he said.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to consider anything else at this point, Officer Kellums?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Williams, could you hear Officer Kellums' testimony?
Yes, I heard his testimony.
Very good. Thank you for your patience. What do I need to know, sir?
Okay, I did inform Officer Kelly that I am not operating a motor vehicle, but I am operating an automobile. I did inform Officer Kelly of the ruling of Rodriguez v. Ray Donovan, U.S. Department of Labor, 769 Federal 2nd, 1344, where the U.S. Supreme Court's decision has ruled that all codes, rules, and regulations are for government authorities only and not for human creators. In accordance with God laws, all codes, rules, and regulations are unconstitutional and lacking due process.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Are you telling me that a case at 769 Fed Second 1344 indicates that all law?
In a surprising twist, the sovereign citizen actually tried to defend his stance using the case Rodriguez versus Ray Donovan. The catch? That case has absolutely nothing to do with Michigan's traffic laws, or car insurance at all, for that matter. It's a completely unrelated legal matter from another state. So why bring it up? Maybe he thought tossing around legal jargon would impress the court or confuse the magistrate. But here's the thing, the judge knows the law. This guy clearly doesn't. It's pretty obvious who's steering this courtroom. I've looked at the argument from every angle, and it still makes zero sense. What about you? Do you think there's any logic behind it? Or is it just smoke and mirrors? Let me know what you think in the comments. Meanwhile, the magistrate is showing remarkable restraint, even as the man starts twisting the judge's own words, which, let's be honest, is never a good idea.
Required to have one, stating that when you're not operating in commerce, to which I informed the officer that I am not operating in commerce as stated in USC 18 USCA 31 paragraph A6, states that a motor vehicle, the term of motor vehicle meaning every description of carriage, conveyance, propelled or drawn or mechanical powered and used for commercial purposes. This is what Title 18 USCA Section 31A6 states or defines as a motor vehicle, to which I am not operating in commerce. I'm not using
for the purposes of that particular chapter of the United States Code. It would not control what happens in terms of the Michigan legislature defining in Chapter 257 what a motor vehicle is, and an automobile
right
under Michigan law is a motor vehicle. But okay, continue.
Right, it's a motor vehicle, which is described as anything, even by the Michigan compliance statute of 751, which you just stated, is determined as something that's transporting goods, which I'm not transporting goods.
I understand your position, and I can tell you that that position doesn't happen to be legally correct. But go ahead.
So you're basically stating that there's a misinterpretation.
One of the worst strategies in a courtroom? Trying to outsmart the person who decides your fate. And yet, that's exactly what this guy's doing. Whether he genuinely believes he's cracked some legal code or he's just another misinformed sovereign citizen, it's starting to feel less like a defense and more like a late-night comedy sketch. He acts like he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is watching the game fall apart. He keeps throwing out random legal cases in a last-ditch effort to sound credible, but nothing sticks. And now, the magistrate, who seems relatively new to this kind of legal theater, is patiently walking through every single point, as if trying to convince someone the sky is blue. Let's see what other so-called evidence he pulls out next.
Somehow but regardless, am trying to convert a right into a privilege. Now, the question I have for you is, what right has been converted to a privilege?
My right to freely travel unencumbered and
now,
unfettered.
I will ask you this. How is your right to travel removed by receiving the citation?
By trying to require me to have a license to operate a automobile, which is my private vehicle.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want me to consider?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I can tell you this. The Michigan motor vehicle laws, including the laws that require you to carry insurance, that require your vehicle to be registered, and require that registration to be current, do not run in violation of any right to travel under the Constitution or the United States Supreme Court decision that you have cited. In fact, Michigan courts have held that essentially the right to travel means the right for you to move from A to B, not the right for you to travel from A to B under your most convenient way. So you could walk from point A to B all you wanted. You could take a taxi or an Uber or a plane or a train or a bus. But if you wish to travel by using a motor vehicle, the Michigan laws are applicable and don't unconstitutionally interfere with the right to travel. It doesn't convert the right to travel into a privilege. You are not denied the right to travel. You may be denied the privilege of traveling via a motor vehicle that you are operating.
There were moments during the hearing when it almost seemed like the sovereign citizen was making progress. But don't be fooled. That illusion came from the magistrate generously giving him space to talk. And while I do respect the commitment to fairness and due process, these types of cases rarely lead anywhere productive. They usually just drag on, testing everyone's patience. If you looked at the officer sitting in the corner, you could almost see the thought bubble. Can we wrap this up already? So what's your take? Is the judge being admirably fair, or is this just enabling more pointless legal standoffs? Let me know in the comments. For now, let's get back to the hearing. Though honestly, it feels like this one should have been over 10 minutes ago.
So
Okay, so
that is what the law says, and that's what I'm finding. Is there anything
Okay,
else
so-
you want me to consider about that finding?
Shuttleworth v. Birmingham, U.S. 147. Do you mind telling me what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in that?
US 147 doesn't give me the site of a case. That's an incomplete site of a case. Okay.
It was Shuttle.
And
I
if
said-
you wish me
I
to
said
consider the case,
Shuttleworth.
why don't you tell me what was at issue in the case and what year it was decided?
I said Shuttleworth v. Birmingham, U.S. 147, 1969, where it says
Hold
no
on. US
license.
147 is not a complete site. The way you cite to a case is by name and then volume number and then the name of the publication and then the page number. So for instance, when you said 769 Fed 2nd 1344, what that means is volume 769 of a book or volumes called the Federal Reporter, second edition, at page 1344. So when you're asking me about this most recent case that you've talked about, what you said was US 147, I think. That's not the citation to a case. So you're going to have to tell me more about that case. Who were the parties to that case, and what issue was before the Supreme Court in that case?
Okay, so you didn't hear me cite the name of Shuttleworth v. Birmingham?
I heard you say the name. That
Okay,
doesn't tell me
and-
what. That's not a complete cite of the case.
All right. Do you not have the documents that I filed when I filed to say that I want to have an informal hearing? The affidavit that writes that my
There are documents that have been scanned into the court that you dropped off.
okay.
So
So
from
even
those
if,
documents, why don't you tell me the proper citation for Shuttle versus Birmingham?
okay, traffic infractions are not crimes, blah blah blah. Person faced with okay.
Right. Traffic infractions are not crimes. That's absolutely correct. They are civil
no,
infractions for a reason.
I was reading from a different case, but the case that I'm citing from states that no license necessary to drive an automobile on public highways, streets. No license is necessary. The word operator should not include any person who solely transport his own property and who transport no persons or property for hire or
Where's that
compensation.
citation from?
Okay, I just appeal it, and that way I can make sure all citations are.
That's fine. I mean, the idea is I can't look up what you're telling me, right, without a proper citation. So you can read. I mean, for all I know, and I don't mean this, I'm using a farcical example. For all I know, you're quoting the municipal court in Honolulu, Hawaii, which has no jurisdiction over Michigan.
It's understandable.
I don't know.
Throughout the hearing, the sovereign citizen kept referencing legal cases like he was reading names off a grocery list, but without actually understanding what any of them meant. It felt like a school presentation from someone who never read the book. And yet, the magistrate kept his cool, staying professional and breaking down basic legal concepts most people either understand or accept. Still, this entire exchange felt one-sided. The magistrate was educating, while the other party wasn't really listening or didn't want to. It raises a bigger question. Does indulging these arguments help clarify the law, or does it just encourage more people to show up in court with half-baked theories and waste everyone's time? This particular sovereign citizen was calm and respectful, unlike many we've seen, which I'll admit was refreshing. But in the end, the courtroom isn't the place to test out legal fantasies. Curious to hear your thoughts. Was the judge too patient or just doing his duty? Let's see how this all ends.
Cite Payne v. Massey, 196 Southwest 2nd, 493, Texas, 273.
Okay. Well, and I can tell you that Texas law, a court interpreting Texas law, that decision wouldn't be controlling on a Michigan court. But that's fine. I think I understand where you're going. If you want, I don't need to consider anything else. I'm just asking you, is there anything else
Okay, well,
you want to present to me?
if you're not going to consider anything else, then we can proceed on to your ruling, of which I know you're going to find. So, and like I said, like you said, I have a right to appeal it. So
yeah, and I'm willing to listen. If you're going to quote something, I need to know what you're quoting, and I need a proper citation so I can look it up myself, right? Because otherwise people could just run around quoting Mickey Mouse if they wanted.
is my automobile not my private personal automobile that's not being used in commerce?
I would have no idea the use of your motor vehicle, and it's not relevant to me for the purposes of deciding whether you're responsible for these civil infractions.
Okay. Well, I have nothing else for you to consider.
Well, very good. I'm letting you know the law does not make a distinction between your using the vehicle for personal reasons or you're using the vehicle for commercial reasons when your registration plate is expired and when you fail to show proof of insurance. Both of those are required.
The MCL language.
Both of those are required under Michigan law for anyone operating any motor vehicle. That's what I can tell you. So
correct.
If you're
a motor vehicle, to which I am not operating a motor vehicle, and this is what we are trying to
I guess
circumvent.
Yeah,
I am operating my automobile, not a motor vehicle.
I can tell you that an automobile is considered a motor vehicle under the Michigan Motor Vehicle Code. So that's fine. Is there anything else you want me to consider?
Nope.
Very good. All right. So I've listened very carefully to the evidence. I do find that it's more likely than not that when you were required to by Officer Kellums at a traffic stop show proof that your vehicle was insured, that you failed to do so, and that it is more likely that your not your operator's license, I'm sorry, the registration plates on the vehicle were expired. So I'm going to assess the $125 on the no proof of insurance case and the $110 on the expired plates case. All right. Thank you both for your time and patience. You're all set. Have a very good day.
Thank you, sir.